Rishi Sunak, 60,399. Liz Truss, 81,326. Therefore, I give notice that Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. Liz, come up on stage.
It's an honour to be elected as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy.
Britain is finally getting a new Prime Minister to succeed Boris Johnson. The Conservative Party has chosen Liz Truss over Rishi Sunak to lead the UK government. Truss won the race with over 81,300 votes versus Rishi Sunak, who won nearly 60,400 votes. Making her victory speech, Truss said she campaigned as a Conservative and will work as a Conservative. She assured of a bold plan to cut taxes and grow the economy. She also promised to deliver on the energy crisis and also pledging to deliver a great victory for the Conservative Party in 2024. So what lies ahead for Liz Truss? How will UK's policies shape towards India and the prospects of a free trade deal by Diwali? What will UK's stance be towards Ukraine and Russia? And what does this really mean for Rishi Sunak's political career? Joining me now to take this forward, I'm joined by John Kampfner, Executive Director at Chatham House, Adam Drummond, Associate Director and Partner, Opinion Research. Also joining us are Nigel Fletcher, Political Historian at King's College London, and writer and columnist Farooq Dhondi. Adam, if I can begin with you. For the last few weeks, it had been clear that it is Liz Truss who is in the driver's seat and not Rishi Sunak. How did the polls and the mood within the Conservatives start changing towards Liz Truss? What went wrong for Rishi Sunak?
Well, I think the interesting poll finding probably came out actually when MPs were still narrowing down the candidates to be Sunak versus Truss. So YouGov came out with a series of polls of Conservative Party members when MPs were still deciding which candidates to go through, showing Sunak losing fairly decisively to almost any of the other candidates by margins of sort of 55 to 45 or 60-40 or 70-30. So Sunak was always in this slightly strange position where he was doing very well among the MPs, but the party membership largely sort of turned against him. And I think they turned against him partly because his spring statements, so his sort of pre-budget announcements earlier in the year, committed to various sort of tax rises, which Conservative members really don't like. But also he was seen as fairly pivotal in bringing down Boris Johnson, who even in amidst all of his scandals, Conservative Party members still quite liked Boris Johnson, and they still resented MPs who had a part in bringing him down. And Liz Truss was very clear to be upfront from the beginning that she was loyal to Johnson throughout.
Right. Let me also get in John Kampfner at this point. John, what, according to you, will be her immediate priority in terms of reforms? She has said that she will turbocharge the economy, she'll deal with the energy crisis head on, and also deal with the cost of living crisis. What, according to you, will be the first reform or first priority for her?
The first 5 priorities are all going to be the same. It is to keep the ship afloat over this incredibly difficult winter that the UK and Europe and further afield people are going to face, with energy spikes of 200% already and future ones planned for each quarter, with inflation well busting 10% and heading for 15 or higher, a National Health Service on its knees. And that's just the start of the analysis. You could talk about widespread strikes involving all different sectors. It is a monumental in-tray. And the issue that I tend to look at, which is the UK's role in the world and the international agenda, that will struggle to get a hearing. But she is absolutely spoiling for a fight with the European Union, which I think is a disastrous position, but it is one that she believes holds the key to her re-election among Conservatives and Brexiteers. But on a more positive note, she will continue the UK's, in my view, courageous approach to Ukraine. And that will be I imagine, one of her very first trips to Kiev, and her first major outing more broadly will be to the UN General Assembly in a couple of weeks' time in New York.
Right. Let me get in Dr. Nigel Fletcher. Dr. Fletcher, what, according to you, would be some of the key indicators to look at when it comes to her cabinet? Any key possible choices that you can think of?
Yes, I think the interesting thing is going to be the extent or otherwise of continuity from the Boris Johnson cabinet. We saw, of course, lots of ministers, including Rishi Sunak, resigning from Boris Johnson's government, which brought him down. But before that, there were a number of people who sat in his cabinet and some who came back afterwards, who have backed Liz Truss. And it'd be interesting to see how many of those retain their position, or whether she'll try and make room for supporters of Rishi Sunak to try and unite the party. It's always the case in leadership elections that leaders tend to talk about reuniting the party and coming back together again after a leadership election. But I think it's particularly important in this one, where it's been a very fractious leadership election. They've really taken lumps out of each other during the past few weeks, and to such an extent that I think it seems unlikely that Rishi Sunak will be able to accept a position in Liz Truss's cabinet, even if he's offered one. And so I think that will be a significant challenge for her. And it's notable as well that she made a very clear strategic decision not to resign herself from Boris Johnson's cabinet and to remain loyal to him. And indeed, even in her acceptance speech just now, she was saying that she considers Boris Johnson to be a friend, that she was proud to have served in his cabinet, and so on. So I think that will be an interesting point to note. Is this going to be a continuation of Boris Johnson's cabinet, or will she try to make it a new start by bringing in some people who perhaps were sent to the backbenches during Johnson's leadership?
All right, very interesting take. Let me get in Farrukh Dhondy at this time. Farrukh Dhondy, what do you feel this means for Rishi Sunak's political career? Nigel had this interesting point to see whether he is offered a cabinet post and whether he eventually takes it or not. But really, what does this defeat mean for his political future?
I don't think that Rishi has a political future in a Liz Truss cabinet. I don't even know why anybody would want a position in Liz Truss's cabinet. It's like wanting to be agricultural secretary at this moment in Pakistan, you know, with the country under flood. It's really, as John Kempner said, this government, from tomorrow, the new prime minister faces an absolutely devastating task of regenerating Britain. All she's ever said right through the campaign and today in her very, very cursory speech, saying, I will cut taxes on the rich so as to allow them to invest and regenerate the economy. It's a dog's whistle for Tories. That's what it means. It doesn't actually practically amount to anything at all. Which taxes is she going to cut? Who is going to invest in the country? How is it going to regenerate itself with the fuel crisis, with the cost of living going up, with lawyers, doctors, teachers, postmen, everyone, firemen, railway workers, all threatening to strike and actually striking, pulling that off. I don't understand, with the gas and fuel prices going up, with food beginning to cost, the NHS being absolutely on its knees, how is she going to revive any economy or Britain at all? It requires some detailed policy, and all she says, I'm going to cut taxes, and that's going to regenerate, inject the new life into the economy. There is no detail yet. Let's see the new cabinet. We call it the Uncle Tom's cabinet. Let's see what happens. With the plans that they have. As far as Rishi is concerned,
very important points there.
He should go back to hedge funding.
All right, Rishi Sunak. Okay, you're saying he should go back to hedge funds, does not have a political future. But John, if I can get you in at this point, all the economic measures that Liz Truss has been speaking about, there have been concerns in the UK, and people have been saying that this will increase the borrowing costs significantly, even though Liz Truss and members of the Conservative Party say there is fiscal headroom to do so. Do you think this will be a trial by fire, in a sense, for Liz Truss? And if she is not able to put the economy back on track, then there will be problems in 2024?
I mean, I agree with a lot of what Farooq Dondi just said in terms of the scale and in terms of the myopia of her package. But she felt that it's a very interesting question about, was a lot of her pitch over the last few weeks a tactic to get her over the line? It was a pretty obvious one, and it has got her over the line. The Conservative members are an incredibly rarefied group of people, constituting 0.3% of the British electorate. So she's got that. Is she now going to change tack? Well, every time we think leaders are going to do that, think Donald Trump, think Boris Johnson, they don't. They actually govern exactly as they campaigned, and she has already said she will do that. Now, will she? I mean, all politicians, all they want to do is to get re-elected. Is her approach conducive to unlocking some miracle cure for growth between now and spring or autumn of 2024? And don't forget, there's always a time lag between economic figures and the way people feel their lives are changing, for better or for worse. So it either has to be an incredible miracle cure, or this ideology is going to land the Conservatives in the wilderness in 2 years' time. But the other point that I think is really interesting about her, I mean, she is the self-styled Thatcherite for an Instagram age, and she is absolutely obsessed with this idea of disruption. She looks at a world that is hugely disrupted, international institutions, authoritarian regimes, economic models, you name it, they're not working, and we do not have a world at peace or prosperity. And her answer is not to reassure, it's to disrupt further. And it's one of those things, if you're in the casino and you're losing, you just gamble more. Does that win? Who knows? But it's a sort of devil may care approach in terms of, I've only got 2 years and I'm going to leave my mark.
Right. Right. Adam, if I can come to you, what about Boris Johnson? Do you think there is a chance that Boris Johnson, Adam, may return as Prime Minister of UK in future?
It's really sort of down to what he does. I think to an extent, he and his allies are gambling that Truss is going to be a complete failure and everything's going to collapse, and then the Tory party will do what it did in 2019, which is stare into the abyss of getting 9% in a national election and, turn to the only solution that they've had in the past. But Boris Johnson's approval rating when he announced his resignation was about 20%. So he is not anywhere near as popular as he was. There's also, I think, the interesting question of whether he just wants to go and make a lot of money. He would complain apparently quite frequently while he was Prime Minister about how little the job paid by comparison to his lifestyle and the expenses he has. So the suggestion that has been made is that he will basically spend a couple of years rebuilding his bank balance and getting into a comfortable financial position, and then maybe see how things are going. But the real question is it's partly up to Liz Truss and whether or not she provides the space for Johnson to come back. And as my fellow panelists have been saying, the in-tray that is facing her looks really quite daunting, and it wouldn't be that difficult to imagine her failing.
All right, we're going to take a short break, but we request all our guests to stay with us. We'll be right back, and when we come back, we'll discuss Liz Truss's approach towards India, the free trade deal with India as well. Don't go anywhere. This discussion continues on the other side.